Hello, welcome back to part 14. The girls have got the bedroom all prepared. They are ready for intruders. Let's see what happens when they wake up in the morning. Beatrice Teresa Conran, just what have you been up to? Beans sat up, rubbing her eyes. Oh, is it morning already? She asked, surprised. Yes, it is morning, and you can just clean up this room, and that means every cornflake removed from the carpet before you come down to breakfast, Gran stormed. Beans blinked. Yes, Gran. Anne sat up slowly. Louisa groaned and turned around, pulling the duvet over her head. So much for traps and alarms, Beans said with disgust. She was almost disappointed. An hour later, the tins and drawing pins and hangers were all back in their proper places. The cornflakes had been vacuumed up until the carpet looked like new. I'd still like to know what you three were up to. Gran peered at her reflection in the hall mirror before straightening her hat. It was just an experiment, Gran, Beans said for the umpteenth time. An experiment? An experiment? You and your father, God protect him, must learn to do your experiments out in the garden workroom and keep them out of the house, Gran said. Mind you, I'm not surprised your dad works in this house sometimes, considering the state of his workroom. The door was just about to fall off its hinges. So untidy. I had to use your dad's tools to fix it this morning. Did that nice Detective Warner get in touch about your father whilst I was out shopping yesterday? No, Gran, I'd tell you if he had, Beans replied. I'm not so sure about that, Beatrice. Gran turned to wag a finger in Beans' direction. I know you don't want to upset me, so I wouldn't put it past you to keep bad news to yourself. Well, I'm not. Just make sure you don't, Gran sniffed. I'm not made of glass. Yes, Gran. No, Gran, Beans said. I just hope your dad's safe, Gran muttered. If I didn't have you three girls to look after, I don't know what I'd do. All this worry. Beans was surprised. Then she wondered why she was surprised. She was more like her Gran than she thought. They both had to do things to stop themselves from worrying too much. Only Gran's way of handling it was to keep busy with her shopping and dusting and cooking and cleaning and mending doors. I'm off to church now, Gran said, straightening up. I want you three girls to behave yourselves. No more trying to plant cornflakes in the carpet. Louisa and Anne smiled. No, Gran, Beans said. Gran pulled her jacket down straight and headed out of the door. Nag, 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 Beans muttered under her breath. I heard that, Beatrice, Gran said. She popped her head round the door. If you three are seeking useful employment today, you can mow the lawn and water the flowers, in both the back and the front gardens. I started it this morning, but I didn't get a chance to finish. The side gate is open, so don't forget to lock it when you're all done. I don't want stray dogs wandering up our side path. And with that, Gran closed the door firmly behind her. Oh, your Gran's dead ace, Anne grinned. I like her. Oh, me too, Louisa agreed. She believes in coming straight to the point, doesn't she? You two only like her because she's never inflicted her macaroni cheese on you, Beans replied. They wandered into the kitchen. My Gran used to inflict cauliflower cheese on me. When you see Granny again, ask her about it. She'll tell you. Anyway, they wandered into the kitchen. Do you want us to help you with anything? Louisa asked. I suppose we'd better start looking for any notes or drawings Dad might have made about his induction oscillator. Detective Warner has been pestering me about those for ages. Where do we start? Anne said. Dad's workroom. Where else? Beans said. Beans thought the search would take forever, but Gran had beaten them to Dad. I'll try that bit again. I'll start that bit even more again. Ready? Beans thought the search would take forever, but Gran had beaten them to Dad's workroom and tidied that as well. Boxes of the same components were stacked neatly side by side against the wall. Screwdrivers were arranged in order of size on the work table. Miscellaneous components were held in one large box. The broom leaned self-consciously against the wall by the window. And Dad's latest gadgets, the animal crunchies shaped like various animals or insects, were in a box by themselves. To think that these little things could have caused all the trouble with our neighbour, Mr. McKee, Beans thought. She opened the drawers in her father's work table and found all of his papers, filed neatly away. Gran again. The notes on the induction oscillator had to be in there somewhere. Beans sighed. Working her way through all that lot would be a job and a half. The workroom was darker than it had been the day before. Beans glanced up. Gran had been on the ladder to throw a tarpaulin over the hole in the roof, and as Gran said, she'd fixed the door so it no longer swung haphazardly on its hinges, but closed properly. The workroom's door's padlock and key had been placed on a shelf just inside the door. I would never have recognised the place, Anne whistled. Dad won't recognise it either, Bean said. He's always been here before to stop Gran from tidying it up. I guess she couldn't help herself. Here, Beans, is that your doorbell? Louisa asked. I can't hear anything. Beans turned her head to listen. Yes, it is, Louisa said. There it goes again. Beans stared at her. How can you hear the doorbell from all the way out here? You must have ears like a Labrador. Louisa grinned. They all went back inside the house. Louisa was right. There was someone at the door. 2 people, in fact. Hello, Beans, Detective Warner said. His piercing eyes seemed to look straight through her and her friends. I brought my sergeant with me today. This is Sergeant Paxman. Sergeant Paxman had his back to them as the detective spoke. At the introduction, he turned around slowly. Beans's breath caught in her throat for a moment. For a brief second, Beans was sure she'd seen Sergeant Paxman before, but that was impossible. He was a podgier man than Detective Warner, but strangely podgy. Podgy in a squidgy way, Beans thought. I don't know what you mean by that. I think I might be a bit podgy in a squidgy way. I'm not sure. Sergeant Paxman was wearing sunglasses and his hair was gelled straight back off his face. His face had a sheen to it, which didn't surprise Beans. He must be baking, Beans frowned to herself. Sergeant Paxman was wearing a zipped-up black leather jacket and trousers which seemed to have a shape all of their own. If the trousers followed the shape of Sergeant Paxman's legs, then the sergeant had the most peculiar shaped legs. Beans at night. I'm trying that bit again as well. I'm not doing very well today. Bear with me, children. If the trousers followed the shape of Sergeant Paxman's legs, then the sergeant had the most peculiarly shaped legs Beans had ever seen. She couldn't see Sergeant Paxman's face very well because he was standing just in front of the sun, so his face was shadowed. May we come in, Beans? Detective Warner asked. Oh, yes, of course. Beans held open the door. I thought you were going to be alone this morning, Detective Warner asked lightly, regarding Anne and Louisa. My friend stayed overnight, Beans explained. She watched Sergeant Paxman as he walked into the house out of the sun. It was strange, but the skin below his cheeks, around his mouth and his jawline was noticeably lighter than the rest of his tanned face. Beans frowned. She couldn't put her finger on it, but there was something very strange about Sergeant Paxman. Something she didn't like at all. That's the end of this episode. What will happen next? What do you think is going to happen next? What's going on with Sergeant Paxman, who's podgy in a squidgy kind of way and has peculiarly shaped legs? What's the deal there? I wonder if he can work it out. Tune in next time to find out. Why don't you now? Lovely to see you. Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.